Hello everyone, time for another story. I've been working at a strange daycare for a while now. Here are my stories. Written by McFlabbypack. So I wasn't sure where else to share these accounts. I work in a daycare located in a remote little town. I won't give too much detail, but it is located in Canada, in a very wildlife and nature abundant little town. Population is around 2,000 people. Around 2 summers ago, I applied to work at the city's second largest daycare. I wanted to share some of the really weird stories I and other people working here have. First, let me give you a simple rundown of my workplace. The daycare I work at is located beside a small abandoned strip mall. Boarded windows, shattered glass all over the place. Lots of graffiti, small shacks made by squatters, etc. That always made walking around the area a little unnerving. The daycare in itself is not too shabby. The inside was clean, or about as clean as a daycare can stay. Had an area for the smaller kids, aged 3 through 6, and then an area for the bigger kids, ages 7 through 9. I guess anything older than that was a little too questionable. These two areas together took up maybe 85% of the building. The remaining 15% was a basic staff lounge. Coat hooks, a kitchen, a dining room. It's a pretty basic layout for a daycare. There is a basement, but I actually never learned about that until my 4th month here. Supposedly, this daycare is haunted. I'm not a huge believer, but I'm not a skeptic either. I myself have simply never had any sort of experience that would fully convert me into a die-hard believer. There are a few stories from the older workers here that I have to admit seem very unexplainable. I'll try and get some in the following weeks. I've only had strange happenings here and there. Lights being turned off after I left them on, certain items going missing and showing up somewhere completely different than from where I left them. Stuff that, in hindsight, is strange in the moment, but could easily be explained. Now, this daycare is actually very close to a large span of woods. This has posed a few concerns as to keeping children here. The first is wildlife. Bears, moose, elk, and other animals can be found all around the area. And it's not entirely uncommon for one to wander around the daycare. During a particularly hot day, we left our front door open, with the screen door still shut. Well, after all the kids had cleared out, a moose forced its way into the daycare. I'll never forget how shit-your-pants scared I was to turn a corner while getting ready to finish my shift, and be met with the sight of a moose skulking around a refrigerator. That's one of the few instances where I actually became petrified. This animal was a good couple of inches taller than me, and I've heard enough stories of what they can do if they feel threatened to know that I had to get the fuck out of there, quietly. After sneaking out the back door, I called our local animal control center. After they arrived, it took them about 3 hours to remove the damn thing. To this day, if there's one thing that I have to chalk up to the supernatural, it's how the hell that thing got in the daycare in the first place, without being heard. I heard a few other staff members say how thankful they were that it was a moose and not a bear or even a mountain cat. But moose can be just as dangerous sometimes. So yeah, that's one story to encapsulate the problem that being located so close to a span of woods is. The second problem that being so close to the woods poses is kids get lost. During the summer, we have pretty frequent outdoor walks with the children, and the forest is an ideal spot to tend to their urge to wander around and enjoy the outdoors for a few minutes. But it's also an ideal spot for them to get lost. To try and prevent this, we normally take around 4 staff members to supervise, each with walkie-talkies so they can communicate and coordinate with each other in case of a missing child. Even so, children are often very curious, and the younger, the more careless. This makes kids lagging behind and/or getting lost a scarily common occurrence. This leads to the next part of this rundown. So our daycare, though normally regarded as being of high quality, has a pretty bad reputation with a good amount of the people. Essentially, a noticeable amount of kids that attend here have gone missing, and even stranger, a number of kids gone missing elsewhere have been found hiding or just hanging out here. Some people have even discovered the bodies or remains of missing children not too far from here. Obviously, it's nothing too bad to warrant any sort of legal action or getting the place shut down. But a large amount of townsfolk do talk about this place carrying some sort of curse. Staff members and parents of children that usually attend here get warning letters about twice a month. I've never actually seen any missing kids be found here. All of it happened before I was hired. But sadly, I have definitely had a few kids here go missing. Some of the kids are found a few days after, well and alive. But my first story regards one of the kids that hasn't been. This happened around my 7th month of working here. It was a Monday afternoon around 1 p.m. We had the usual turnout, 12 kids or so. There were 5 staff members working that day. Now I'm known as being a bit brave here. I actively go out in the smaller kids sections trying to interact with the children. Being a 22-year-old male, I've had a few parents, mainly mothers, give me a suspicious look when I would hang around the kids. I have no bad intentions, I can promise that, but I've just always loved working with children. They provide stress, yes, but nothing compared to what adults can do. Anyway, that day, I was out in the middle of the smaller kids section, sitting and supervising, when a boy, who we'll name Alex, came up to me and started laying down little Lego blocks on my shoe. After about a minute of this, I started helping him. We started seeing how big a tower we could build on the one side of my shoe. Now, Alex was a chubby kid, around 6 years old if I had to say, with dark red hair. He reminded me of myself and how I looked at that age, which is probably why I felt a little attached to him. I should tell you now, to avoid future confusion, that this daycare is 24 hours. It's kind of strange to me to imagine a parent needing to leave their kid at 2 or 3 in the morning, but I have worked the night shift before, and it does happen. With that in mind, around 4:30 p.m., which was the usual time for most kids to be picked up by their parents, no one came for Alex. Until that time, I had been supervising all the kids. But once I saw that no one came for Alex, I started hanging out with him for the rest of the time. I figured that maybe his parents worked a longer job. But around 7 p.m., there was still no sign of anyone coming for him. It was also around this time that Alex apparently started seeing someone walking around outside. Every 2 minutes or so, Alex would point at a window facing the woods behind the daycare and say that there was a man walking around outside. Thinking it was just a parent or one of the staff members, I didn't think much of it. The 3rd time he did it, I asked him if he could tell me what the man looked like. I haven't been allowed to forget what he said yet, as much as I would like to. "He's big, very big. He keeps putting his face on the window. He keeps smiling at me." After hearing this, I called another staff member who had been working and supervising earlier in the morning and asked them if they knew who dropped off Alex today. Going off of what they said, Alex was dropped off around 9 a.m. by an older woman and her other older son. I asked the staff member for the address. It was now close to 8 p.m., and I figured that someone from his family had to have been home now. After leaving their kid here for what had become nearly 12 hours, I wasn't trusting his parents to come pick him up. I got the address, told Alex to put his coat on, and started to lock up the doors to the daycare. I had my back turned towards Alex, trying to lock up the front door. The last thing I heard Alex say was an innocent, "Who are you?" When I turned to see who he was talking to, Alex was gone. Nowhere in sight. I called out his name and searched for almost half an hour before calling the police. The only thing I could find before the police arrived was a set of fresh footprints in the snow that led to where Alex had been standing before he seemingly disappeared. Where the footprints came from was impossible to determine, as they had become covered up by the falling snow. When the police arrived, they spent most of the time trying to come up with a realistic explanation as to where Alex could have gone. I told them about the man that Alex kept seeing at the window, but to them, the word of an imaginative 6-year-old doesn't mean much. To be fair, I hadn't actually seen the man. I nearly took their side in believing that Alex might have been making it up, or just seeing things. That was until after the police went to the parents' house, when I checked the window that Alex had been pointing at. Right there, against the frosted window, were 2 handprints. This was not the first time that one of our kids I was supervising had talked about seeing or hearing this smiling man. We've even had a few staff members saying that they've caught a glimpse of him looking through the windows. There's nothing much in common with the children that see him. It's not like it was only the more imaginative or younger children. I'll leave it here for now, as this post is getting a bit lengthy. The daycare is going to have a staff council meeting in a few days, so I'll see if I can get a few more stories and information from other workers there. I'll update you guys soon. Part 2. So I went to the council meeting last night. I talked to a couple of the staff members, asked about any strange events or stories, and I even got to talk to a former staff member whose daughter is actually taking a summer job here. Daughter is around 17 or so. Firstly, though, I want to address and confirm something. A few of you were wondering about Alex and his current whereabouts or status. Since my last post, I actually got some very devastating news regarding him. The search has officially been called off, and I've even heard that he's actually been declared dead as of this last week. There are some who are still searching, but most of us have simply been focused on consoling Alex's family. As bad as I might have made his parents sound in my last post, they are, admittedly, all incredibly distraught, as am I. Just from my short couple of interactions with him that day, I knew that Alex was a really sweet and special kid, and I'm just hoping that he didn't suffer much, and if he is alive, I'm praying that he is okay. So back to the original topic. Our staff council meeting was pretty basic. Not much happened in regards to any sort of changes in the workplace policies, but I got some pretty strange accounts from 2 different staff members and 1 former member, as well as a strange thing that actually happened while I was there. Our first staff member, who we'll call Mary, has been working here for about 11 months now. Mary typically works night shifts, but during the staff meeting, it was announced by her and the manager that she is only doing day shifts from now on. No reason was really given, but when I found her and asked her about it, she told me the full story as to why she was quitting the night shift. I'll try and repeat back the conversation and story as close to how it went, as it'd be kind of hard to get the full sense from my description of it. So, during my first few weeks here, I actually thought of the 24-hour thing and night shifts as an easy way to make a bit more money than working the day shifts. A couple more dollars an hour, just to sit around and drink coffee, maybe supervising like 4 children at most, I thought. Boy, was I fucking wrong. Shit is weird inside that daycare at night. What do you mean by that? At night, the daycare is a whole different vibe, I swear. That place comes to life at night. Is that why you're switching to day shifts? I guess. Last month something happened. Something fucking weird. I was working the night shift on a Friday. I got here around 7:30ish. Sun was low, but still bright. Once I got inside the daycare, I just hung out for about an hour, drank coffee, played on my phone, regular stuff. Around 8 or 8:30, I started hearing weird shit around the daycare. Like whistling. At first I thought I was just hearing things, but it went on for maybe 5 minutes. Eventually my curiosity got the best of me, so I started looking around to try and find out wherever it was coming from, and... Mary took a pause at this point. She was visibly uneasy. The whistling was coming from the basement. Now I knew that it was fucking whistling, no doubt about it. It was a melody, a damn tune. I couldn't even try and whistle it myself if I wanted. And it was 100% coming from down in the basement. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't about to go down there looking. Call me a pussy, I was just being logical. I could only see a couple feet down the stairs. The lights were off and the switch was down there, so I went to the front desk to go get a flashlight. Once I found one, I shone it down into the staircase. There wasn't really anything down there, just an empty basement at least, as far as I could see. I asked who was down there and waited a couple seconds. Nothing. I asked again, louder. Mary took a very deep breath. I actually asked her if she was okay. She nodded and composed herself. Something mocked me. Something down there fucking mocked me. Like a child mocks your voice, except it didn't sound like a child. It didn't have a child's voice. It was deep and raspy. It almost sounded like they were trying to imitate my voice. I could hear it, clear as day, as clear as I'm talking right now. I bolted once I heard that. I called in sick and said I needed someone else to take over my shift. I got home and didn't get a fucking wink of sleep. The staff member that took over called me later that night and asked why the flashlight was by the basement stairs. I lied and told her I had no idea, but then she asked me why I left the basement window open. Up until that point, I had no idea that there was even a basement window. The next morning, I actually told the manager that I wanted to quit, but he offered me a raise and said I only had to work day shifts if I wanted to. Mary got a phone call at this point. She seemed visibly uneasy and chose not to carry on the conversation afterwards. I just want to apologize in advance if my transitions between stories are a bit jarring and may make things seem anticlimactic. To be honest, I'm just trying to keep the stories as accurate to the original accounts as I can, so I'm sorry if that causes any transitional whiplash. Anyway, this next story came from a younger worker, around 19 or so. He's fairly new here, even more recent than me. About 8 months working here. The story is one that's well known around the staff circle, although the worker it's from was at the center of the story. We'll call this worker Peter. Peter said that on a drive to the daycare for a regular shift, he saw a strange-looking woman walking around the abandoned strip mall besides the daycare. I asked him what was strange about her. According to him, the woman was wearing very ragged clothes, ripped up and stained. The woman was apparently walking very strangely too, almost like she was drunk or maybe on something. Peter described it as like something was dragging her, like she was walking against her own will. He told me that his first thought at seeing this was to advise any other staff members and tell them to be wary of any weird-looking people that might come walking around the daycare. He went to park his car by the daycare first, then called up another staff member and asked for possible help in asking the woman to leave. Once Peter did that, he started to walk to where the woman was. Now, it's technically protocol to actually call a cop if you see any signs of people hanging around that abandoned strip mall, as the only people that would be there were almost always squatters. But Peter tells me that he didn't think they'd need a cop to get rid of what seemed to be only one woman. He admits to knowing better now. Once he got to the strip mall, he started looking around for the woman, but she wasn't anywhere. As he started to walk back to his car to make another call to staff, he started hearing a commotion coming from the direction of the daycare. He began running at this point, fearing the worst. Sure enough, when he got to the daycare, he saw the woman very aggressively smacking her hands against the screen door for the back entrance. Peter said he could hear children and a couple staff members yelling inside the daycare, so he started to sneak towards the front door. At this point, he could tell that the woman was clearly on something. He called one of the staff members inside and told them to stay where they were and make sure none of the kids left. "She's just banging on the screen door. She doesn't know there's another entrance. If you leave that entrance, she'll see," Peter told them. Peter called the police and kept unseen surveillance on the woman, making sure she didn't leave that door. He says that she was actually screaming some really weird stuff about needing the kids in there, saying they were all gonna burn if they didn't let her have them back. Once the cops arrived, they attempted to detain the woman. She apparently thrashed and screamed bloody murder and bit one of the officers. The way Peter says it makes me think that it wasn't too serious. Peter actually got a better look at her at this point and could see that she had completely bloodshot eyes. That detail seemed to really bug him. Peter has no idea what happened to the woman after that, and says that he still thanks God for not letting that woman hurt any of the kids. And that's Peter's story, known and told by almost all of us, but since I knew how close he was to the actual event, I decided to hear the story from him. Now this last story comes from an old member of the staff, who we'll call Jason. This is the staff member whose daughter will be working with us in the summer. It's short and is mostly just an unexplainable thing that occurred about 7 years ago. Jason was on one of the nature walks with a group of kids from the daycare. He went with them and supervised alone, as this was very early in the daycare's history, before the 2 or more person team rule was established for the other workers. Now he says his group consisted of 18 kids, and he made sure to count twice before they left, once in the daycare and once when they were outside. He even says that he counted a few more times on the walk into the woods. Jason actually admitted to me that he's really bad at memorizing and keeping track of faces, so he figured that if he just kept count of the kids, he could tell if any of them had wandered off or gotten left behind. When they got deeper into the woods, after what he said was an 8 to 9 minute walk along the main path, Jason counted another time before they would turn back towards the daycare. He counted 19 kids. Jason said that he had counted another time, slowly and more precisely, 19 kids. At this point, he started leading the kids back to the daycare, walking behind them, and counting them on the way there. He says that he counted over 10 times. 19 kids. As I said before, Jason was super bad with faces, so he had no idea what this mystery kid must have looked like. Midway along their walk back to the daycare, a kid near the front of the group tripped. Jason says that he somewhat foolishly rushed to the front to aid the kid, leaving a good amount of the group behind him. After helping the kid up and again walking behind the group, he counted once more. 20 kids this time. There was another kid that he was either completely blind to or snuck in with the rest of them. He counted once more and still saw 20. They got to the daycare and he counted while the kids were walking in. Still 20. After he finished the story, I asked Jason if he saw any stray kids hanging around the daycare when everyone else had been picked up. He told me that he counted a few more times and paid attention to everyone that got picked up. Still 20, and all the kids were picked up. Whoever these mystery kids were, they had parents and went home. And before I finish this off, I'll tell you the strange thing that happened to me at the council meeting. After it ended and I went back to my car, I found a Lego block by my car. I'm not sure who or what left it there, but it was right outside the front door to the car. More than anything, coincidence or not, it pissed me off a little. Before writing this post, I actually cried for a good while thinking about Alex. He was a really great kid. Anyway, that's it for this one. A bit more lengthy than the last one, I think. I apologize for any grammar errors. I'll update you guys again as soon as I get more stories from the other workers. Thank you, everyone. Watch for more to this story. And have a good night. Love, the Mistress.